Maryland's quiet peace. Concealed shadows of darkness and horrifying violence. Blood-soaked bathrooms. Severed remains in basements. Alleys echoing last cries. And burning apartments of despair. Decades behind bars followed, yet countless innocents were gone. And the cries of mourning still echo. And this is, inside Maryland's most notorious black killers, shocking murders, and true crime documentary. Welcome back to Justice Reversed, where real crimes meet real justice. Number 1. Alexander Kinyua. A quiet Maryland suburb hid a nightmare, one act of unimaginable violence that exposed madness, fear, and a system unprepared. Alexander Kinyua appeared to be the promising face of an immigrant dream. Born in Nairobi, Kenya, he moved with his family to the United States, where his father worked as a physics professor at Morgan State University. Citizen, Alexander was an engineering student and had once been a member of the ROTC. Yet behind the veneer of academic promise was a young man unraveling under the grip of severe mental illness. His social media posts hinted at dangerous delusions, filled with references to human sacrifice and ethnic cleansing. Friends recalled his strange behavior. While faculty had already warned, he could be a Virginia Tech waiting to happen. On the 25th of May 2012, the warnings became reality. Inside the Kinyua family's Joppatown home, 1-year-old Alexander turned on a family friend, 7-year-old Kujo Bonsafo Agyekodi. A former graduate student from Ghana, Agyekodi had been staying with the Kinyuas while awaiting deportation. That evening, Alexander killed him with a knife, then dismembered his body. Investigators later revealed the chilling truth. He admitted to eating parts of the victim's heart and brain before placing the rest of the remains in a dumpster behind a local church. The horror surfaced 5 days later when Alexander's brother discovered a human head and hands in tins in the basement. Their father immediately contacted police. Within hours, Alexander confessed to the killing. In court documents, Harford County prosecutors described the crime scene as beyond comprehension. At the same time, psychiatric evaluations diagnosed him with paranoid schizophrenia. The legal process focused less on whether Alexander had committed the act, he openly admitted it, and more on whether he was responsible for his actions. In June 2013, he pleaded guilty but not criminally responsible to first-degree murder. A state judge accepted the plea, and Alexander was indefinitely committed to a maximum security psychiatric hospital in Maryland. His release would depend entirely on whether doctors and a judge ever determine he is no longer a danger. The victim's family in Ghana was devastated. His sister wept as she recalled their last phone call, saying his dream was to one day lead his country. "I did not believe it," his father said, refusing at first to accept the grim news. The case spread rapidly on social media, fueled by the bizarre timing. It occurred the same week as a cannibalistic attack in Miami. Commentators called it part of a zombie apocalypse, a phrase that only deepened public fear. At Morgan State, the tragedy forced officials to review how they had overlooked months of warning signs. This case serves as a sobering reminder: mental illness cannot be ignored, disturbing behaviors must be reported, and community vigilance can prevent tragedy. Silence, denial, or misplaced loyalty can cost lives. A single night in Maryland left scars that words cannot erase, showing how fragile the line is between reality and horror. Before moving on, if this truth hits you, press HYPE, stand with the forgotten, amplify justice, and make sure silence never buries the voices of the lost. Number 2. Sophia Negroponte. A night of drinking among friends turned deadly in Maryland, leaving behind blood, betrayal, and a shattered community. Sophia Negroponte, daughter of longtime U.S. diplomat John Negroponte, had grown up in the shadow of Washington politics. Adopted from Honduras during her father's ambassadorship, she was one of 5 children given a chance at a new life. But by 2020, at the age of 27, Sophia was battling alcohol addiction and inner turmoil. Her friends described her as volatile, yet kind, someone who could shift from warmth to anger in moments. On the night of the 13th of February 2020, Sophia gathered with her friend Yusuf Rasmussen, 24, and another companion at an Airbnb in Rockville. The three drank heavily. At some point, Sophia and Yusuf argued over what she later called a silly issue. Yusuf decided to leave. Hours later, he returned to collect his cell phone. That moment turned deadly. Prosecutors said Sophia grabbed a knife and stabbed him multiple times, one wound fatally severing his jugular vein. When police arrived after a frantic 911 call, they found her lying atop Yusuf's body, drenched in blood, crying, "I'm sorry." The crime scene was brutal. Officers described the floor covered in blood and a kitchen knife lying nearby. Yusuf was pronounced dead within minutes. In interviews, Sophia claimed she could not recall the attack, only that she argued with him and later removed the knife from his neck. At trial in 2023, prosecutors argued she acted with reckless disregard for life. The jury agreed, convicting her of second-degree murder. In court, Judge Terrence McGann called her a struggling, anger-filled alcoholic whose rage destroyed a life. He sentenced her to 35 years, well above sentencing guidelines, citing community safety. Her appearance at sentencing stood in stark contrast to the night of the crime. Sober and somber, she stood with lowered eyes, flanked by attorneys, as her father, the former U.S. Ambassador and first Director of National Intelligence, pleaded for leniency, calling her a victim of alcohol abuse and trauma. But the judge insisted, the need for accountability outweighs sympathy. Yusuf's family gave emotional statements. His mother, Dr. Zeba Rasmussen, remembered him as a kind and gentle soul, while his father described him as a gift whose future had been stolen. Their grief reverberated far beyond the courtroom. But in January 2024, the Maryland Appellate Court overturned Sophia's conviction, citing improper testimony allowed at trial. The case was sent back for retrial, reigniting debate on justice, privilege, and due process. Her father publicly welcomed the ruling, but the Rasmussen family was forced to relive their pain. From this tragedy emerged sharp warnings. Unchecked addiction can escalate to irreversible violence, conflicts under the influence are a breeding ground for disaster, and ignoring troubling behavior in friends can have fatal consequences. The case is a haunting reminder that even in circles of privilege, no shield exists against the devastating consequences of anger, addiction, and violence. Number 3. Brittany Norwood. In an upscale Maryland suburb, a routine closing shift unraveled into brutality, betrayal, and one of America's most disturbing workplace murders. Brittany Norwood, once a promising college soccer player and by 2011 a sales associate at Lululemon Athletica, appeared to be an ordinary young woman. But beneath her polished exterior, colleagues whispered about thefts. On the 11th of March 2011, her secret was exposed when coworker Jana Murray, a 30-year-old Johns Hopkins graduate student, discovered a stolen pair of leggings in Norwood's bag. Following company protocol, Murray reported the theft to a manager, unaware it would trigger her own death. Later that evening, Norwood lured Murray back to the store by claiming she had left her wallet inside. Security logs confirmed they re-entered around 10:05 p.m. Within minutes, Apple Store employees next door heard screams, cries for help, and the chilling words, "God help me, please help me." The attack, which lasted over 20 minutes, was merciless. Norwood used at least 5 weapons found inside the store: a wrench, hammer, rope, merchandise peg, and knife. Murray suffered more than 330 wounds, including over 100 defensive injuries. The fatal blow severed her spinal cord. Norwood then staged an elaborate cover-up. She moved Murray's car 3 blocks away, returned to the store, inflicted superficial cuts on herself, bound her hands and ankles with zip ties, and created fake bloody footprints using oversized sneakers. She fabricated a story about masked intruders who had robbed the store, raped them, and killed Murray. The following morning, a manager discovered the grisly scene. Police initially treated Norwood as a survivor. But within days, forensic evidence dismantled her lies. Blood spatter showed only 2 people were inside. The staged footprints led investigators back to shoes inside the store. Norwood's shifting accounts eroded her credibility. On the 18th of March 2011, she was arrested for murder. During trial, prosecutors argued the crime was premeditated. They highlighted how Norwood tricked Murray back into the store and orchestrated a calculated cover story. The jury deliberated for barely an hour before convicting her of first-degree murder. At sentencing in January 2012, Judge Robert Greenberg described the act as cold-blooded, brutal, calculated, deliberate, devious, malicious, and imposed life in prison without parole. In court, Norwood sat motionless, eyes fixed downward, as Jana's grieving parents demanded she be removed from society forever. The case, quickly dubbed the Lululemon murder, ignited fear across Bethesda. Residents worried about random attacks, merchants tightened security, and the fabricated tale of intruders rattled the affluent neighborhood before the truth emerged. Jana's family established the Jana Troxell Murray Foundation to honor her legacy. From this case arise enduring lessons. Dishonesty and theft can escalate into catastrophic violence. Trusting instincts when sensing danger is crucial, and fabricated narratives only deepen suffering for victims' families. This story remains a chilling reminder that betrayal and rage can lurk behind familiar faces, turning ordinary spaces into scenes of unthinkable horror. Number 4. Keanan Turner. In April 2021, a meeting meant to unite a father with his child turned into a nightmare that stunned Washington, D.C., and echoed far beyond. The man at the center of the case was 32-year-old Keanan Christopher Turner, a resident of Clinton, Maryland. He was the former partner of Ebony Wright and the father of her infant son. Their relationship had soured when Ebony refused his demand to end the pregnancy. After she gave birth, Ebony filed a custody and child support lawsuit against him. That lawsuit, prosecutors argued, became the motive for murder. On the 12th of April 2021, Turner asked to meet his son for the first time. At Ebony's apartment in Southeast D.C., he was welcomed by Ebony, her mother Wanda, her sister Destiny, and the baby. For nearly an hour, conversation appeared ordinary. Ebony likely believed this was the first step toward responsible fatherhood. Then, Turner excused himself to use the bathroom. When he emerged, he carried a gun. He shot Ebony in the head while she held their son. He turned the weapon on Wanda, shooting her in the back of the head. In a back bedroom, he shot Destiny in the face, leaving her bleeding but alive. The cruelty did not end there. Turner set fire to the custody papers, ignited flames inside the apartment, and left his own infant child in the blaze. He tried to dismantle a Ring camera, but the device captured an unmistakable tattoo on his arm, evidence that would later seal his fate. Amid the chaos, Destiny heard the baby's cries. Despite her injuries, she rescued him from the smoke-filled apartment and called 911. First responders found a horrific scene: 2 women dead, 1 survivor gravely wounded, and an infant saved by seconds. The investigation moved quickly. Ballistics, surveillance, and the Ring footage pointed directly to Turner. His motive was laid bare: he sought to avoid financial responsibility by eliminating the mother of his child. In July 2024, a jury convicted him on all counts, 2 charges of first-degree murder, while armed, attempted murder, arson, and firearms offenses. At sentencing in October 2024, Judge Maribeth Raffanin imposed 68 years in prison. She told the court, "The planning, the cruelty, and the absence of remorse elevate this beyond even the most violent crimes." Turner sat silently, his expression flat, showing no acknowledgement of the devastation. Prosecutors had argued for life, citing the heinous nature of the murders. The Wright family's grief was palpable. Destiny, now raising her nephew, described their lives as forever scarred. In a statement, the family urged, "Please continue to pray and thank God that justice has been served." Supporters rallied through a GoFundMe campaign, reflecting community outrage and compassion. This case delivers stark warnings: domestic disputes, if ignored, can escalate into tragedy, child custody conflicts require protective measures, and silence in the face of threats may cost lives. One man's refusal to accept responsibility destroyed a family and left a child to grow up in the shadow of unimaginable loss. Number 5. Michael McClanahan. A mother's silence after nights of violent arguments ended in one of the most chilling discoveries Maryland police had seen. Michael McClanahan, a 38-year-old resident of Suitland, Maryland, was well known to authorities long before April 2025. His relationship with 44-year-old Sharon Turner was repeatedly described as toxic, marred by police calls for domestic assaults and multiple violations of protective orders. Neighbors recalled hearing constant fighting through the walls, but what unfolded in late April was far beyond routine disturbance. On April 21, neighbors reported loud banging and screaming from Turner's apartment, louder than any prior altercation. After that night, she vanished. Witnesses observed McClanahan entering and exiting her apartment, driving her car, but Turner herself was never seen. Between April 23 and 24, McClanahan purchased multiple bags of concrete and pry bars from Home Depot, receipts that would later become critical evidence. When concerned friends filed a missing persons report, Prince George's County Police conducted a welfare check on April 24. Forcing their way into the Ewing Avenue apartment, officers encountered a scene they described as horrific. Turner's body lay wrapped in plastic and blankets, partially encased in wet concrete, showing blunt force trauma to the face, neck, and back. The medical examiner confirmed a broken hyoid bone, evidence of strangulation or direct neck assault. As investigators examined the scene, they spotted Turner's car being driven nearby. The driver fled into Washington, D.C., evading officers. Just a day later, McClanahan was arrested in D.C. after allegedly shoplifting from Walmart and stabbing a man when confronted by security. He carried Turner's car keys, license plates, and the incriminating receipts. McClanahan admitted to police that the relationship was violent, calling it toxic, but denied intent to kill. Prosecutors, however, pointed to the Home Depot purchases as clear indicators of premeditation and an effort to conceal evidence. He was charged with first-degree murder, second-degree murder, and attempted concealment of a corpse in Maryland, alongside separate assault charges in D.C. The brutality of the crime shocked the community. Turner's neighbors described her as a loving mother of two whose smile could brighten any room. Her family organized a vigil, where her cousin told mourners she didn't deserve this end. She deserved protection, not pain. The case drew wider concern because it was the second murder in Prince George's County in 2025 involving concrete used to conceal a victim's body. Prosecutors called the discovery a disturbing trend that speaks to both rage and calculation. From this tragedy, hard lessons emerge. Recognize that repeated violations of protective orders signal escalating danger. Always take loud, unusual disturbances seriously. Early intervention can save lives. And never underestimate the lengths abusers may go to conceal their crimes. Vigilance from communities is critical. McClanahan now awaits trial, facing overwhelming evidence and the weight of a grieving family's demand for justice. Even in familiar homes, hidden violence can erupt into irreversible tragedy. Silence enables danger, but awareness can prevent another name on a memorial. Number 6. Rondale Dickerson. A joyful engagement in Maryland quickly unraveled, ending not in wedding vows, but in a shocking scene of rage and bloodshed. The man at the center of the case was 34-year-old Rondale Leblond Dickerson of Mappsville, Virginia. Known for years of steady work at poultry plants, he was described by some as reliable. But prosecutors painted a very different picture after his fiancée, 44-year-old Zakieya Broadwater, was discovered dead in her Ellicott City apartment. The two had celebrated their engagement on September 11, a moment that her family later described as filled with joy. By September 18, that happiness was replaced by horror. That morning, according to police, Dickerson showed up at Broadwater's apartment pounding on the door. Her teenage child told officers he tried to break in but eventually left. Hours later, the 4-year-old returned home from school to find their mother in the bathroom, lifeless, surrounded by blood. The medical examiner confirmed multiple stab wounds. Investigators said the scene was blood everywhere, a violent struggle evident from the injuries not only on Broadwater but also on Dickerson's hands and arms. Later that evening, police were called to a nearby Walmart for a welfare check. Security had escorted out a shirtless man acting erratically. That man was Dickerson. Officers noticed fresh lacerations on his arms. After treatment at a hospital, he was taken into custody. During his first interview, he denied being at the apartment. But when confronted with inconsistencies and forensic evidence, police say he confessed to the killing. Prosecutors would later call the act brutal, vicious, and full of rage. On the 22nd of September 2025, Dickerson appeared before a Howard County judge. Calm and expressionless, he listened as prosecutors described the attack in detail. The judge denied bail, citing the danger he posed to the community. He now faces charges including first- and second-degree murder, assault, and home invasion. A trial date has not yet been set, but the weight of the evidence, his confession, his injuries, and the brutality of the scene casts a heavy shadow over his defense. The community reaction was swift and emotional. Broadwater's cousin, Michael Handy, wrote online, "She was a beautiful soul inside and out, pure in heart." To have her snatched from us in such a violent way angers my spirit and breaks my heart. Friends remembered her smile as one that could brighten any room. Police used the case to highlight a broader crisis, warning that domestic incidents remain one of the leading drivers of violent crime nationwide. The tragedy leaves behind hard lessons. Ignoring early signs of controlling or aggressive behavior can end in disaster. Family members must take threats seriously, no matter how sudden they seem. And victims need stronger community resources to break free from violent relationships before it's too late. One engagement meant to mark new beginnings instead ended in bloodshed, reminding us how quickly love can be consumed by rage. Number 7. John Allen Muhammad. Ordinary moments in Washington, D.C. turned into scenes of terror in October 2002, when an unseen sniper brought the capital region to a standstill. The man orchestrating the violence was John Allen Muhammad, once a respected U.S. Army sergeant and Gulf War veteran. Born John Allen Williams in Louisiana, he had earned a reputation as a skilled marksman. By 2001, after personal turmoil and radical shifts in ideology, he adopted the surname Muhammad. Instead of using his training to serve, he channeled it into one of America's most chilling murder sprees. With his teenage accomplice, Lee Boyd Malvo, Muhammad transformed an ordinary Chevrolet Caprice into a weapon of fear. They cut a small hole in the trunk, turning it into a concealed sniper's nest. From there, they targeted people engaged in the most routine tasks, filling up their cars, shopping, or even walking to school. Victims were chosen at random, stripping away any sense of safety. 10 lives were taken, and 3 more were wounded. Investigators quickly realized this was not ordinary gun violence, but coordinated psychological warfare. A tarot death card left at one scene bore the chilling message, "Call me God." At another site, a note demanded $10 million and threatened further attacks on children if the money was not delivered. The terror was so pervasive that schools canceled outdoor activities and residents changed daily routines, zigzagging across parking lots in desperate attempts to avoid becoming targets. The investigation grew in urgency as the killings stretched from Maryland to Virginia. The break came when law enforcement connected the shootings to an earlier Alabama robbery murder. A fingerprint from that case identified Malvo, leading investigators directly to Muhammad. On the 24th of October 2002, the two were found asleep in their blue Caprice at a Maryland rest stop. Inside was the Bushmaster .223 rifle used in the shootings, along with maps that marked potential targets. Muhammad faced trial first in Virginia, where prosecutors invoked newly enacted anti-terrorism statutes. The Virginia Supreme Court later described his crimes as marked by calculation, extensive planning, premeditation, and ruthless disregard for life. In 2003, a jury convicted him of capital murder, and the following year, he was sentenced to death. Maryland later secured additional convictions for 6 more murders. On the 10th of November, 2009, Muhammad was executed by lethal injection. He declined to make a final statement, a silence that deeply frustrated the families of his victims. Nelson Rivera, whose wife was killed, said afterward, "I feel better. I think I can breathe better. I'm glad he's gone." Bob Myers, who lost his brother, noted, "There is a certain bit of closure, but you never get full closure. I think it was justice." This case leaves sharp warnings. Radicalized anger can escalate into mass killing, unrestricted access to firearms magnifies the threat, and vigilance from both communities and authorities is essential to stop planned violence before it unfolds. The D.C. sniper attacks revealed a haunting truth: terror can hide in plain sight, waiting to strike where life feels most ordinary. Number 8. Nicole Michelle Johnson. 2 children disappeared not into the night, but into the trunk of a car, concealed for months, their tragedy unfolding in silence. Nicole Michelle Johnson, a 33-year-old woman from Baltimore, was once trusted to protect her sister's children, 7-year-old Jocelyn and 5-year-old Larry. In 2019, their mother, Deshelle Johnson, battling depression and instability, handed custody to her sister. That decision became a fatal mistake. By May 2020, the arrangement spiraled into horror. At a hotel, Nicole grew angry when Jocelyn tried to take food from a refrigerator. She struck the child repeatedly, the final blow forcing her head against the floor. Jocelyn died instantly. Nicole later admitted, "I lost control. Instead of calling for help, she wrapped the small body, stuffed it into a suitcase, and left it in the trunk of her car. 1 year later, in 2021, 5-year-old Larry, already malnourished, stopped breathing. Nicole claimed he lay down, said he was tired, and never woke up. But autopsies told a darker truth. Both children were starving. Jocelyn weighed only 18 pounds, Larry 21. Nicole placed his body in a tote box and positioned it beside his sister's remains in the trunk. The deception ended by chance. On the 28th of July 2021, officers in Essex, Maryland, stopped Nicole's car for fake tags and no insurance. As they prepared to tow the vehicle, they noticed a stench of decomposition. Inside the trunk, they found the maggot-filled tote and the suitcase containing the children. Nicole attempted to run, but was quickly caught. Investigators revealed she had carried the bodies in her vehicle for months, even traveling with them. Prosecutors described the crime as atrocious, a calculated concealment of neglect and death. In 2024, Nicole pleaded guilty to 2 counts of first-degree child abuse resulting in death. Baltimore County Circuit Court Judge Nancy Purpuris sentenced her in February 2025 to life in prison, suspending all but 50 years. Standing before the court, Nicole showed no tears, no visible remorse, her silence cutting deeper than words. The family's grief spilled into public statements. Deshelle admitted, "I'll never see my kids again because of trusting my sister." Their grandmother demanded justice, while a great-uncle described them as beautiful, lovable, and robbed of a future. The community, shaken, gathered for vigils. Baltimore County's police chief stated, "Our department grieves with the community. No words can ease this loss." Child advocates criticized systemic failures, noting the pandemic and lack of formal custody oversight allowed the children to vanish unnoticed. This case leaves sobering lessons. First, entrusting children to relatives without oversight is dangerous. Second, visible signs of neglect must trigger immediate reporting. Third, systemic welfare checks cannot lapse, even during crises. Silence enables abusers, vigilance saves lives. Nicole Johnson's 50-year sentence closes her chapter, but it cannot restore 2 young lives. Their story remains a haunting reminder of trust betrayed and warning signs ignored. When silence surrounds abuse, tragedy festers unseen. Only vigilance and intervention can stop the suffering before it's too late. Number 9. Zakieya Latrice Avery and Monifa Denise Sanford. 2 children's lives ended inside their own home, not at the hands of strangers, but by those sworn to protect them. Zakieya Latrice Avery, a 8-year-old mother of 4 from Germantown, Maryland, and her 1-year-old roommate, Monifa Denise Sanford, told investigators they were demon assassins. They believed Avery's children were possessed and claimed they saw their eyes turning black. To them, this was not murder, but an exorcism. On the night of the 16th of January 2014, neighbors first noticed something strange when a child was left unattended in a car. Police responded, but the women brought the child back inside before authorities could act. By morning, the horror had unfolded. Investigators later pieced together the timeline. The women attempted to strangle and even break the neck of Avery's 1-year-old son before resorting to stabbing him and his 2-year-old sister. Both died from multiple wounds. When police entered the townhouse on January 17, they found a very bloody scene. 2 children, Norelle and Ziana Harris, were dead. The older siblings, 5-year-old Tanaya and 8-year-old Martello, were severely injured but alive. Monifa herself was also wounded. Avery attempted to run out the back door but was caught immediately. Officers also discovered a knife discarded near a vehicle outside. The case shocked Maryland and quickly gained national attention. Prosecutors charged both women with 2 counts of first-degree murder and 2 counts of attempted murder. In court, Avery appeared expressionless, while Sanford looked dazed. A judge ordered psychiatric evaluations after evidence emerged of deep mental instability. The state's attorney confirmed Avery had previously been involuntarily committed for treatment, while Sanford admitted to past suicide attempts. The brutality of the killings, combined with the bizarre motive, drew intense scrutiny. Montgomery County Police Chief Thomas Manger called the crime heartbreaking. Neighbors, stunned, gathered for a candlelight vigil outside the townhouse, leaving flowers, balloons, and stuffed animals. One neighbor confessed, "We did not see it coming." Family members grieved publicly. Avery's step-grandmother told the Washington Post she wasn't herself, she was in another zone. While the case was still in its early stages, one truth became clear: the system had missed warning signs. Child Protective Services had been scheduled to visit the home the day before the murders were discovered, raising questions about intervention failures. From such devastation, lessons emerge. First, untreated mental illness inside a family setting can escalate into unimaginable danger. Second, red flags, such as repeated signs of instability or delusional beliefs, must never be dismissed. Third, when child welfare agencies are alerted, swift and decisive action is essential. Ignoring early warnings can have irreversible consequences. This case remains one of Maryland's most haunting tragedies, remembered for its disturbing mix of delusion, brutality, and systemic gaps. Avery and Sanford's names are now etched into America's archive of true crime documentaries, a chilling reminder of how fragile the line is between protection and destruction. When distorted beliefs silence reason, even love can turn lethal. Mental health intervention is society's first defense against hidden danger. Number 10. Rico Leblond. She walked into an alley, expecting a fight. What awaited instead was an ambush that ended her young life forever. Rico Hector Leblond, a 20-year-old from Germantown, Maryland, carried a criminal history long before the 15th of October 2015. He had known his victim, 21-year-old Zakieya, since middle school. But that day, their paths collided in a way that shocked Montgomery County and drew national outrage. Zakieya, a transgender woman living openly as her true self, had recently confronted Leblond in public. Prosecutors argued he felt humiliated when she acted flamboyantly toward him at a mall in front of his peers. Hours later, the dispute escalated into deadly violence. Witnesses recounted how Leblond struck her with a stick before luring her into a narrow service alley behind a Gaithersburg laundromat, telling her the fight would continue there. Instead, it was an execution. Hiding behind a dumpster, Leblond stepped out and opened fire. According to the medical examiner, Zakieya was shot in the head and groin. Witnesses testified he stood over her, firing multiple rounds even after she fell. It was nothing short of an ambush, the judge later declared. At 8:12 p.m., Zakieya was pronounced dead at a local hospital. Police arrested Leblond the next day at the Germantown Transit Center. His first trial ended in a hung jury in 2017. A second jury convicted him of first-degree murder, but that verdict was overturned on appeal due to errors in evidence presentation. By 2020, facing a third trial, Leblond accepted a plea deal. He admitted guilt and received 35 years in prison, the maximum allowed under the agreement. In court, Leblond told the judge, "I just want to be a better person." His lawyer pointed to his troubled upbringing. But Circuit Court Judge Deborah Dwyer emphasized the premeditation. "I can't think of a more calculated act of violence than hiding in wait behind a dumpster." At sentencing, Leblond appeared subdued, eyes fixed downward as Zakieya's family delivered their impact statements. Her mother, Tyshika Smith, collapsed in grief at the crime scene and later told reporters the lengthy court process had taken an enormous emotional toll. Her father admitted in court, "Do I think that 35 years is enough? No, it will never be enough." The family believed her murder was rooted in hate, a targeted act against her identity. Zakieya's killing became part of a national conversation. Advocates noted she was the 21st transgender woman murdered in the U.S. that year. The hashtag #SayHerName spread online, amplifying her story as both a personal tragedy and a symbol of systemic violence faced by transgender women of color. From this tragedy emerged sharp lessons: never dismiss harassment as harmless, for public humiliation can fuel lethal retaliation. Communities must confront transphobia head-on, and systemic protection for vulnerable groups is not optional but essential. Justice brought a sentence, but not healing. Her story remains a viral reminder: silence and prejudice together can prove as deadly as bullets. Every crime we've explored tonight carries a haunting truth. The greatest dangers are not always strangers, but shadows hiding in familiar faces. These Maryland cases are not just stories of blood and betrayal, they are warnings, urging us to stay vigilant, to speak when silence feels safer, and to recognize danger before it erupts. More shadows remain, more truths demand to be uncovered. Stay with us on this journey, subscribe to Justice Reversed and hit the bell, so you'll never miss the next story that must be told.